Now, just to remind. Excellent. Thank you, Matt. A huge thank you to Matt Dunn, who will be managing the IT for us tonight. You will see that we will be recording the session, and a link will be sent out where you can watch the session. Now, there will be a question and answer session. We're not going to have a Q&A after each individual speaker. We'll be having a Q&A at the end, so you can either, hopefully there'll be time for you all to raise your hand, ask a question at the end of the session. If you don't want to do that, do please use the chat box to raise a question or pass a comment. And again, just a little reminder to our speakers, if someone does use the chat box to raise a question or pass a comment, please, I know it'll be a great temptation, please try not to answer it while the other speakers are speaking. We'll get to all the Q&As at the end of the session, because this way we can all concentrate on what these speakers are saying. Well, this is a very special evening for us tonight, because it is commemorating British Labour history, a triple anniversary. And this is, as I'm sure we all know by now, a year of anniversaries. We've just had the 75th anniversary of Windrush, and of course the subject of the moment as well, the 75th anniversary of the NHS. But we're here tonight to discuss some very different histories. I suppose in some ways it's the histories of knowledge and the histories of access to knowledge. It's the 50th anniversary of both the South Wales Miners Library at Swansea University and the Modern Record Centre at the University of Warwick. And in August, it'll be the 90th anniversary of the Marxist Memorial Library at Clerkenwell Green in London. And personally, now, my name is Marion Gwynn. I'm based at Bangor University in the history department, but I will never forget, during my early, very radical and politically active years, the importance of accessing reading material on the sorts of subjects that I wanted to know about, and how the books that I was able to read in non-traditional libraries helped form my thinking and still form my thinking now. And I'm reminded of something that American communist and writer Richard Wright said about his experiences of accessing books on the sorts of subjects as a young adult that he'd wanted to read about at school, but never could have got hold of them there. He said, "It would have been impossible for me to have told anyone what I derived from these books, for it was nothing less than a sense of life itself. Where my education failed to support and nourish me, I clutched at these books, and I have an abiding conviction of their ultimate value." And so it is with great excitement I look forward to hearing from our three speakers tonight. I'm just going to introduce the three of them now before I ask our first speaker to give her presentation. Our first speaker is Marianne Jump. She's the director of the Marx Memorial Library, where she has worked for almost a decade. She's also chaired the Society for the Study of Labour History's Archive and Resources Committee. Our second speaker is Rachel McGregor, who is acting archives manager at the Modern Record Centre at the University of Warwick, where she has worked for the past 4 years. Prior to that, she worked in both higher education and local authority archive services, and has a particular interest in outreach and engagement activities. And our third speaker is Sian Williams, who's the head of special collections at Swansea University, managing the South Wales Miners Library, the Richard Burton Archives, as well as the University Library's rare books, art and history of computing collections. She was appointed librarian of the South Wales Miners Library in 1995, and she has led or contributed to numerous externally funded projects, including digitisation projects, community-based exhibitions, collaborating with community organisations, academics, museum, library and archive professionals. And so it's a huge thank you to the three of you for agreeing to speak to us tonight. So I call our first speaker now, Marianne Jump. Over to you, Marianne. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marianne. I'll just share my screen. Hopefully this will all go seamlessly. Is that all looking as it should? Yeah, great.
Yes.
Well, firstly, let me just say I'm absolutely delighted to be on this panel this evening. The world of archives and archivists and librarians is a very friendly, collaborative one, and I think that's all the more so in our circle of labour movement and labour history resources. So it's really great to be on this panel with the MRC and South Wales Miners Library. The three of us agreed we'd touch on three subjects in the course of our little presentations this evening. Firstly, the founding of our organisation and the kind of political and historical context. Secondly, looking at some key moments or aspects of our collections we'd like to highlight. And finally, reflecting on kind of current challenges and opportunities and what we're looking forward to next. So I'm going to start by saying a few words about the Marx Memorial Library's foundation 90 years ago in 1933. Our foundation was born out of a very particular political context. It was 50 years after Karl Marx had died. And of course, in the 1930s, this was a time where fascism was on the march across Europe. The BUF had been founded in Britain in 1932, and the threat of fascism was very real. You'll see this is a wonderful part of our archive here, this flyer of the Marx Commemorating Committee that was founded in 1933 by various labour movement and trade union bodies in response to this anniversary, 50 years since Marx died, to discuss what to do about this particular occasion and in this particular context. You'll see the list of delegates here. There's people from the National Union of Railwaymen, the National Amalgamated Furnishing Trades Association, the Labour Research Department, and many more. With it was in fact W.E. Baldwin, who we know actually passed a motion to that a library would be the most fitting memorial in this particular historical context, that would preserve Marxist and socialist literature and make it available to the working class. So this meeting was held in March, and in October of that same year, a second meeting was held at the Peel Centre, not too far away from where we are now, where it was decided that we would be based in our wonderful building on Clerkenwell Green. 37A Clerkenwell Green, you can see there, that's a very evocative picture of Victory in Europe Day, just outside the Marx Memorial Library with some really, I love our signage, then I wish we could go back to that, to be honest. So it was decided we would be in 37A Clerkenwell Green, and there could be no really better place for us to be. Our building has a fascinating radical history in its own right. We had been home to the offices of the Social Democratic Federation, the first socialist party in Britain, with members including William Morris and Eleanor Marx. And we also famously are home to the office where Lenin worked while he was in exile in London for 1902 to 3. So a very fitting place for our library to live. We were founded as a library and archive on Marxism and socialist history with a very specific educational function. And we have a wonderful archive of bulletins, which you can see one here for saying 50 years after on the PowerPoint, which document our history in great detail. And this educational function is on every single page, particularly these early years. Throughout the 1940s, it's clear that fascism, the struggle against fascism through education in study circles across the UK was a really central tenet of our organisation. So what makes us kind of who we are today? I'm just thinking about our community of labour movement archives and libraries. Obviously, we have a Marxist focus, and stemming from the nature of our foundation, we also have a very international feel to both our collections and our education work. We're one of a number of libraries and archives which sprung up across Europe, including the International Institute of Social History in Amsterdam and Karl Marx House in Trier, for example, in response to the rise of fascism in the 1930s. And I'd also argue that it was our educational remit and our very close work with the trade union movement, which sets us apart from many other organisations. To this day, we have 8 national trade union affiliates and work very closely with those on all sorts of education projects. I'll now go on to talk a little bit about some of our major collections, and this brings us actually interestingly right forward to the 1970s, when the MRC and South Wales Miners Library were also founded, because it was at this point in our history where we acquired some really significant major library and archive collections. In part because some major figures in the library and in the movement more generally passed away and left us their wonderful materials. I'll just list a few of those and I'll talk through some of the slides which take a more thematic approach to the collections. We were donated our Spanish collection, that's our archive and library on the international brigades and more broadly the Aid Spain movement, by the International Brigade Association, the group of veteran brigaders in Britain in 1975 when Franco died. And this is a really internationally significant collection which includes lots of papers of individual volunteers, including letters and diaries and photographs as well. In the same decade, the John Williamson collection came to us. John Williamson had been a librarian at the Marx Memorial Library after he was deported from the US in the McCarthyite period, and he brought with him an amazing collection, particularly of pamphlets and periodicals, which have with particular strengths in the civil rights movement and Communist Party USA material as well, which is largely unmined, I have to say. Thirdly, in this period, John Desmond Burnell's peace collection came to us. He was an eminent scientist and had been president of the World Peace Council. So this is another really strong strand in our collections. And finally, James Klugman, who is a historian of the Communist Party, left us his comprehensive library on early trade union and Chartist material, as well as his wonderful ceramics. Rather than talk about these individuals, I thought it would be more evocative to talk about some of the subject strands that run through all of these collections and many of the much smaller archives that have come to us over time, which relate to the individual activities of various activists. In light of our recent National Lottery Heritage Fund bid, we've been working with volunteers to pull out different subjects which might engage new, broader audiences in our collection. So I'll just talk you through some of the slides on these subjects. Obviously, given the nature of our foundation, anti-fascism is a really strong theme throughout our archives. You can see some examples of our pamphlets here and a photograph drawn from one of us from our Spanish collection as well. Needless to say, workers' rights and unemployment is a huge area of strength in our collection. We have in particular our print workers collection. The core of it was donated to us by Unite the Union in 2009. And it's developed really significantly in recent years with material particularly from the Wapping dispute and the bright colour workers as well, which you can see an example from here. We also have an extensive newspaper archive, including material from the general strike and specific ones like this, like the Busman's Punch, which is just wonderful. Another area we've been working on in recent months has been to really make connections between our own archives and the radical history of the area. Clerkenwell Green, where we're kind of situated, has a fascinating radical history where people have gathered for centuries before marching on to London, including in response to the Tolpuddle Martyrs, the May Day demonstrations and all sorts. So we've been really putting together a comprehensive resource on that to engage local communities in recent months. Anti-imperialism is another key strand. We've got a really rich collection, particularly on India actually, as well as strands within our poster collection of about 2,000 posters, including campaigns against imperialism, which we've been able to make connections with the national curriculum recently as well. We've also been highlighting our anti-racist collections in more recent times and pulling out strands on Black history throughout our collections, which perhaps have gone we haven't given quite as much attention as we might have done in recent years. And we've got an awful lot on campaigns against the apartheid regime in South Africa, for example, and specific collections on Paul Robeson and Claudia Jones as well. we also have an awful lot on women's liberation, including a recent donation from the National Assembly of Women, and lots of material on Sylvia Pankhurst too. We're really excited that hopefully shortly a 8-foot statue of Sylvia Pankhurst will be erected on Clerkenwell Green, and we'll be able to make some really exciting connections with our education work as well. So I hope that gives a little bit of an overview. I mean, it's hard to really mine all of these wonderful parts of our archive, and the way we're hoping to kind of approach our collections moving forward. So what next? Obviously our mission remains the same, to focus on Marxism and socialist history, but in this different environment. There are challenges, of course, to managing an extensive archive of about 50,000 books and pamphlets and some major archive collections as well in a historic building like ours. You know, as much as the wonderful history of the building kind of is part of the experience visiting the Marx Memorial Library, it's also a constant challenge. And of course, being a small independent charity like ourselves, resourcing is always a struggle. So that's always something that we're having to consider, as much as independence is also can be beneficial. However, the opportunities, I think, are enormous at the moment. We've in recent years developed a kind of revisited our work as a workers' school and developed a very rich education programme, as well as building connections with our trade union affiliates through our education work. Most recently this year sees it's the final year of our Unite History project, where we've worked with the union to pull together a history for education purposes, drawing on our archives and the archives of others as well. There's also a lot of regeneration work going on in Clerkenwell Green. We've got the Elizabeth line, the redevelopment of Clerkenwell Green, and that's actually prompted some really interesting collaborative work with local libraries, archives and community groups. So we're really hoping this is an opportunity to put the Marx Memorial Library at the centre of that, and help to tell our story about our rich radical history and how that our collections feed into that. But perhaps most significantly, we've just recently been in receipt of a grant from the National Lottery Heritage Fund to really look at what we're doing and how we might improve what we're doing, specifically with regard to audience development. So this comes back to Marianne's point at the beginning about how we open up these rich resources and all the stories that they tell to a broader audience, and particularly to the working class movement. We've just come to the end of commissioning some audience research into what people want to hear from us, what we might do differently, and we're also looking at what the possibilities are around redeveloping our building to enable better access, to have a drop-in exhibition space, and to really make sure our collections are looked after in the longer term. So there's lots of really exciting things on the cards for us. So I hope we'll be having lots more discussions as we approach our centenary in 10 years' time. So these are some of the focus groups and community work we've been doing recently as part of that piece of work. Finally, I'd just like to highlight a couple of other things that we're doing for our 90th anniversary, particularly on the 18th of November, in keeping with our founding impetus. We are holding an international online symposium reflecting back on the 1930s with the title Popular Front: Resistance to Fascism, Learning the Lessons, in which we'll also have be speaking with various international comrades and also partner organisations like Karl Marx House in Trier and the Institute in Amsterdam as well. So I think that should be another interesting event. So I hope you keep your eyes peeled for that one. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marianne. That was superb. That was such an interesting overview of the Marx Memorial Library. I have so many questions to ask you, but I will save those, of course, until the end. It's my pleasure now to introduce our second speaker, Rachel McGregor of the Modern Record Centre at Warwick University. Rachel, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marion. And it's a great pleasure to be here. Very excited and very interested to hear from Marion, and lots of interesting things that I want to ask as well. Let me just share my screen. Hopefully this should work. Is that looking okay? Thumbs up from somebody, or
Yes, it's fine. We can
Yep.
see it. Thank you.
Yeah, great, brilliant. Okay, so yes, thank you very much for welcoming me here, and it's great to be able to kind of compare and celebrate and promote the kind of things that we're doing, so very much following in with what Marion has just outlined. Similarly, I wanted to sort of starting with the Modern Record Centre. This is a Modern Record Centre today. If you haven't visited us, we're on the lovely campus at the University of Warwick in Coventry. And this is our sort of modernish 1992, I think the building was, or 1993, 1992, I think the building is. But obviously our origins date back further than that. This is a great photo I found from the university archives, which shows you our current university library, which is the building on the right hand side. The photo I've just shown you is kind of just slightly off screen, only it hasn't been built yet, if that makes sense. So the University of Warwick itself was founded in 1965. So we as an institution are coming up to our 60th anniversary. But the Modern Record Centre is a little younger than that. So we opened our doors on the 1st of October 1973. So the university itself was established in that post-war expansion of tertiary education, of which there are obviously many other examples. Warwick University had from the outset a very marked and a particular emphasis on links with industry, which is still evident today. That's still a very strong link that the university works with and alongside local and national and international industries. So in a sense, it's no surprise, I think, that the collections that we hold are focused on that kind of theme. There was an express intention, I think, to establish something that looked particularly at the history of industrial relations, and I think that's key to the collections that we hold. So it's not the history of industry, it's not particular industries necessarily, but it is very much around trades union activities, employee rights, but also from the perspective of the employer, so trade associations and organisations. So it very much reflects the relationship between employer and employee. And that was explicit from the start when the centre was established. And it came into being thanks to a number of academics at the university and beyond. But I wanted to particularly mention the man on the left, who is George Bain, who is still a great friend of the Modern Record Centre and a fantastic champion for us. And he was at the time an academic at Warwick University, alongside his colleague on the right, the late Hugh Clegg. And together they and others they put a bid in fact, to the Leader Hume Trust for 4 years worth of money to fund 2 archivists and an assistant, because they had identified, as far as they were concerned, that their interest in industrial relations and the history of industrial relations, they were not able to access the sources. This goes back to what Marion was talking about, what in fact we started out talking about, the way that people get access to the sources that they want to kind of further investigate the topics that interest them. And this is where this impetus came from. They felt that the sources they wanted to see and they recognised were at risk, and that there wasn't a central repository for them. And there was, in fact, a bit of controversy when the centre was set up, because other local record offices that already existed kind of felt that there was a sort of implied criticism that they weren't, that actually, well, they should be doing, collecting some of these records. But I think it became clear quite quickly that there was a place for collecting national kind of trades union records, national organisations, so not with a local geographic base, but with a national view. And our collections and our collecting policies do run side by side with lots of other institutions like the Marx Memorial Library and the Working Class Movement Library and many other institutions. And from a perhaps slightly rocky beginning, when there was a bit of antagonism, I think we're now in a place where everybody works very well together and there's not a kind of sense of fighting over resources. What we're interested in is preserving resources and making them available wherever that is. And that's definitely where we're coming from. So from the outset, the collecting policy was around, as I've mentioned, trade unions and employer organisations, also pressure groups and political groups. I should mention that you all, the audience will, I'm sure, know this, but the major political parties, the Labour Party's records at the People's History Museum, the Conservative Party at the Bodleian, and the Liberal Democrats at the London School of Economics. So we were never kind of in the market for the mainstream political parties, but we do collect around the sort of non-mainstream political parties, and actually with a particular emphasis on Trotskyist groups and individuals, but other mostly sort of far left, but we do also have collections around far right groups as well. So there are political collections amongst what we have. Now, it's impossible to pick out one collection, but I'm not going to pick out one, but the one that I have to mention, because we've got so much. I could have done one talk on one of our, I like to think of our star collection, which is the records of the Trades Union Congress, which is the largest one of the largest Labour campaign groups in the world, and a really significant archive for us. So the TUC was founded in 1868, but the records themselves go back as far as 1846, so some 20 years before it was founded. And I think its richness of the collection lies particularly in its international dimension, because it had links from the outset, obviously, to the empire, but then also beyond that to trades union movements across many countries in the world. And for me, it's very definitely the sort of archive where if you asked me to find a document on any topic, like give me any topic, and I could probably find something relevant in the archives of the Trades Union Congress. It is one of the most well-used collections of those we have. Just because of its incredible breadth. I was looking at, for example, some of the research files in there. There's a series called Social Issues with topics such as air pollution, cruelty to animals, British summertime, betting, race relations, sport, religion, and on it goes. There's much on the perennial issues affecting a workforce, so housing, childcare, health, and its counterpart, disease and industrial diseases, and then broader things around press and propaganda and so on. It's a fantastic resource for particular moments in history, so the 1926 general strike and the Spanish Civil War, which Marian's also alluded to. The TUC were very much non-interventionist in terms of their approach to the Spanish Civil War, but they did give support to many of the relief efforts. Another fantastic collection is that of the Transport and General Workers Union, which was founded in 1922. And I didn't know what to pick to represent it, but one of my colleagues drew my attention to this fantastic poster, which was for a transport cavalcade, the romantic story of transport through the ages, which was a production put on to mark their Silver Jubilee at a theatre in London, and I absolutely loved it because it's just that unexpected. I find it difficult to imagine a trades union putting on this now, but you can tell me I'm wrong, that there's something like this going on now. I really hope so. And it's brilliant. We've got the script for the show and some fantastic photographs from it. So the T&G archive, obviously the T&G became the biggest trade union in the country, and it ended up, I think about 80 or more unions came together to form this enormous trades union. Two of its general secretaries, Ernest Bevan and Frank Cousins, became Labour government ministers, whilst at the same time still technically heading the union. So that was the kind of, obviously the power that they had at the time. And in the 1970s, their general secretary, Jack Jones, was often said to be the most powerful man in Britain. And in 2007, they amalgamated with Amicus to form the Union Unite. So the archive is vast and covers, again, a huge range of topics because of the occupations. There's tugboat men, there are workers in tobacco, rubber, oil, furniture, explosives, food and drink, you know, goes on forever, the list of occupations represented. Dock workers and the often painful history of industrial relations in dock working are very well represented in the archive. And that kind of brings me, I mentioned Jack Jones, who was General Secretary, and we also hold, alongside the papers of the G&G, we have Jack Jones's personal archives, which are a fantastic collection too. So Jack Jones was born in 1913 and son of a docker, and himself worked in the docks as well as in engineering. He interrupted his sort of growing trades union career to fight in the Spanish Civil War. He's not on this photo, by the way. I spent some time trying to identify him on it and realised in the end he's actually this version of the photo, which is from our archive. He's actually been cut off it, but so he's slightly to the left of it, you have to imagine him. Anyway, when he returned from the Spanish Civil War, where he was wounded at the Battle of Ebro in August 38. Shortly afterwards, he married Evelyn Brown, who you see here. Well, there's two photos of both of them. And she was herself a prominent Labour activist. She was also a widow of a fellow international brigadist. And I mean, for me, I'm very drawn to the human aspect of archives. So I love these photographs from his papers showing what a a strong couple they were, and both of them really active campaigners. He continued after his retirement to campaign for pensions and pensioner rights, and had close associations with Coventry as well. So again, another reason, because we're based in Coventry, why it's such a great collection for us to have. We have the papers of other individuals. Tom Mann, who was also obviously a massive figure in trades union history, son of Coventry. I noticed he was on the Marx Commemoration Committee. He was one of the members of that committee, so that's a good, nice link there. And I'll return to him in a bit, but we have the papers of Bill Morris, who was the first black leader of a British trades union, Rodney Bickerstaff, Brenda Dean, first woman to lead a major trades union. Also, that collection also contains significant material relating to the News International dispute, the Wapping dispute, and a significant sort of period in trades union history. We hold, as I mentioned, a wealth of material on campaign and pressure groups. So a massive range of topics, prison reform. So we've got the Howard League for Prison Penal Reform archive, civil rights, nuclear disarmament, a lot around social care and in that area. And just, I included this partly because I love the photograph, a great set of photographs from the papers of Marjorie Allen, who was a landscape architect and campaigner for preschool education and child welfare. She particularly promoted the idea of adventure playgrounds for children, and some fabulous photographs of children playing in probably not very health and safety approved environments, but they are a great great record of children and history of childhood. So we continue to grow year by year. This year, we've received accessions on topics as various as the GCHQ Trades Union campaign, campaigns against the privatisation of British Telecom, anti-nuclear campaigns. But I think the biggest news for us in the most recent years has been the arrival of the archives of the National Union of Mine Workers. So this photograph is very exciting to me and my colleagues, because this shows the records of the NUM all beautifully boxed up in our strong rooms. The project has been quite a long time in coming. It's been a collaboration with a number of wonderful partners, principal amongst those, the National Union of Mine Workers themselves. They've been so generous in their time and commitment to the project, and without them, obviously, none of it would be possible. We've also had financial support for the project from the Wellcome Trust, the Pilgrim Trust, and the National Manuscripts Conservation Trust. And I know I'm almost contractually obliged to say that, but I think it's worth saying that at the outset, a Leverhulme Trust got us off the ground, and external funding continues to allow us to expand and develop and do more. And that's something Marion touched on as well. So the collection of the NUM, just got a few highlights from it here. So it's only just arrived with this. About half of it is with us now. The other half just requires some conservation work, and the cataloguing is now underway, and it's a 3-year project. So at the end of that, we hope we will have a catalogue of the collections, as well as we'll be able to do work promoting the collection, working with communities, and we will hope to work with ex-mining communities as well, as it's very much their archive, and reach out in that way. So that's a very exciting project for us. Getting the records of the NUM also gave us leverage to build a new offsite storage space, which has meant, because up to this point we really were pretty full, and we wouldn't have been able to take the NUM archive had we not got extra expansion space. So that's really exciting for us, because it means that we now can continue to consider larger collections as and when it's appropriate for us to take those in. So exciting times too for us. And it's our 50th anniversary year. So we've got various things planned, so I'm using this as an opportunity just to plug that as well, because everyone is very welcome to what we've got planned. So we're also hosting a symposium, which is going to be on the 20th of September. There's a call for papers out now, so if you go to our website, the details are all on there. And we're looking to hear from people who've used our archives, and we want to know more about how people have used us, really, and we're really hoping we can encourage researchers from across the country and across disciplines to share those with us. That'll be followed by a drinks reception in traditional style. We'll have a cake, you know, and a chance to celebrate with our friends, donors, depositors, supporters. We will have an exhibition, so there's a little shot at the corner of the exhibition space here, which will be online, and also a physical exhibition in our exhibition space. Now, the exhibition is a sort of history of the Modern Record Centre in 50 items, and we are asking for people to nominate their favourite items from the Modern Record Centre. So if you've spotted something in my talk that you liked, please feel free to nominate it. We'd love you to do that. We're trying to engage with people in that way. So we probably won't be able to fit all 50 objects into our exhibition space, but will be an online presence for that. And we're also going to put, we're going to get commemorative exhibition catalogue as well. We'll also be doing work with our students to engage our students with our celebrations, and we'll do some behind the scene tours for Heritage Open Day if anyone fancies that. Look out for those adverts. So this has kind of brought me back round to Tom Mann, because you will see on that photograph, that's our bust of Tom Mann, who, as I say, is quite close to our hearts in a way, because he was from Coventry and such a major figure in trades union history. So with the exhibition and wanting to vote for a favourite object, so do I have a favourite object? Well, I do. So this is my favourite object, which is a photograph of a painting of Tom Mann, which was done in about 1924, I think, by a Soviet artist. He's sort of depicting Tom Mann as a hero of the people, and it comes from Tom Mann's own personal papers. So what makes it particularly nice is we've got Tom's comments on this. And he explains that the artist had never met him, but did it from a photograph, and that he'd been to a workshop so he could get these sort of engineering. He was a turner, so he'd got the sort of lathe and everything accurate. But Tom Mann was 68 at this point, so I think he's been quite, you know, generous with his depiction. And Tom Mann's comment was, he's given me a nose like Tolstoy, which I absolutely loved, and just kind of made it made it kind of a very personal touch to that. So I'll wind up by just saying, please vote for your favourite item from our collections here. There's a link, and thank you all. I hope I haven't overrun too much, and we look forward to celebrating in the future with you. Thank you.
Rachel, thank you very, very much indeed. Another excellent presentation. Now, I apologise to Paul. We've had messages from Paul who would like captions, and we have been trying to get captions up. So deepest apologies that we haven't been able to get captions for him to read. Now I welcome our third and final speaker for this evening, Sian Williams of the Miners Library at Swansea University. Sian, over to you. Thank you. Diolch yn fawr.
Oh, thank you. Right, I am just going to make sure that I can share my screen. Hang on. Sorry, I've just had it all set up and now it's all disappeared again. Right, let me see if that, sorry. Apologies. No, that's not working, is it? It works so perfectly on our trial run, and now it's not. Let me go back in.
That's fine, Sian. Just take your time. Just find your presentation.
It's disappeared. I don't know if you can see.
There we go.
You can see it, but can you see it in the right
If you
view?
you just need to put it into.
Let me
close
hang
it
on.
down again.
Let me go.
And reopen.
There we go. Hopefully that's working
That's it.
now.
That's
there
it.
we are.
Very
We
clear.
got there
Thank
in the
you.
end. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. And I'm delighted to be part of the panel and following on from some really excellent talks. As Marian has said, you know, I think as a community we work really closely together and value each other's support. And I think as I talk, you will see that there are synergies amongst our collections. So what I'm going to do is just talk about how the South Wales Miners Library and why the South Wales Miners Library was founded, and then talk a little bit about some of the work we have been doing, and a nod towards our future and the next chapter of the South Wales Miners Library. So the South Wales Miners Library, well, the Institutes of South Wales have been described as one of the greatest networks of cultural institutions created by working people anywhere in the world. And in October 1973, the 20th of October 1973, which actually was the 75th anniversary of the founding of the South Wales Miners Federation. So that was the date that was chosen to open the South Wales Miners Library, and it was established as a research library and as a centre for adult and community learning at Swansea University in partnership with the National Union of Mine Workers in South Wales. So there we go. So just to provide a little bit of context, unlike the Modern Record Centre, where their remit is national, our collection focuses very much on South Wales, and in particular the South Wales coalfield, which is pictured in pink. And our collection holds political, social, cultural and educational material relating to the history of industrial South Wales. It focuses very much on the miners, but not exclusively. We do have material about other industries in South Wales, the steel workers, the tinplate workers, for example, but it is very much about the mining communities and the people that lived and worked within those communities. Most of our collection dates from the 1900s onwards, although we do have some material from before that date. So, so within South Wales, from the middle of the 19th century onwards, there was an increase in demand for high quality steam coal, and there was rapid sinking of pits throughout the coalfield and the development of communities. And you can see a picture of a typical mining community in South Wales, if there is such a thing. And as well as housing and chapels, other social and cultural facilities were built in all the mining communities, such as miners' institutes. Until the mid-1950s, the coal industry in South Wales maintained a steady level of production and employment. However, in the 1960s, collieries began to close. 74 collieries closed in the 60s. And although the rate slowed a little in the 70s, from the late 70s and the newly elected Conservative government in 1979, they instigated a policy of pit closures. And the last deep mine in South Wales actually closed in 2008. It was Tower Colliery. It originally closed in 1994, but reopened as a result of a workers' buyout and closed then in 2008. But it's against the backdrop of the colliery closures, particularly in the 60s, that the South Wales Miners Library was established. In the late 1960s, 2 PhD students at Swansea universities were aware that with the decline of the coal industry and the resulting impact on communities, that a lot of records created by the working class institutions and people within the communities were in danger of being lost. Urgent action was needed. So in December 1970, the Departments of History and Economic History at University College of Swansea, as it was then known, with the support of the National Union of Mine Workers in South Wales and the Coal Industry Social Welfare Organisation, applied to the Social Science Research Council for a one-year project to locate and collect all historical material relating to every aspect of life in South Wales coalfield from the end of the 19th century to the present day. And the application stated, and I quote, "Without such a rescue operation at this moment, all future research on the coalfield will be severely restricted. The coalfield is contracting at such a rapid rate that unless something is done now, many important sources will be lost within one generation." Fortunately, that application to the Social Science Research Council was successful. And initially it was for a one-year project. And so 3 research workers, David Egan, Mervyn Jones and Alan Morgan, started on the project in August 1971, and a part-time secretary, Connie Jones, as well. The project workers were based in Swansea, Cardiff and Merthyr Tydfil, so across the coalfield, establishing local contacts, publicising their work as much as possible, and started collecting records. It soon became clear that the project, there was so much material out there that they needed to extend the life of the project. So an application was made to extend it for another 2 years, and a 4th research worker, Howell Francis, was recruited, and the project grew. An oral history element was developed, which was really very pioneering for the time. And then later on in 1981 to 1983, a video recording project was developed. And this is a photograph of the project worker, Kim Howells, setting up ready to do some video recording. But back to the original project. When Howell started on the project in September 1972, he realised that book dealers were active in purchasing Miners' Institute libraries. And it was at a time when it was considered that many of these libraries had already disappeared. Howell undertook a survey of all 135 miners' institutes and welfare halls, and that revealed that only 3 of the libraries were still operating. 16 had already become part of the public library service, and 29 were still in existence, but they weren't in public use. So a project was set up to salvage the libraries. And in December 1972, as a result of all that work, a decision was made to establish a centralised South Wales Miners' Library at Swansea University, into which all miners' institutes and welfare halls could deposit their library collections. So by the time the South Wales Miners' Library opened on the 20th of October 1973, books from 24 institute libraries had been deposited. We now have books from over 60 institutes and also many personal collections from miners' leaders and other significant individuals. But the library wasn't only established to house the Miners' Institute and Welfare Hall libraries. It became home for other research material collected as part of the Coalfield History Project. And I'll talk about that in a second. But it is important to say that from the very beginning, manuscript material was deposited in the Swansea University archives, which is now known as the Richard Burton Archives. And so you can find in the Richard Burton Archives minute books, photographs of not only the National Union of Mine Workers and their lodge records from across South Wales, but also the records of other organisations, cooperative societies, some local Labour Party records as well. But the rest of the collection was held at the South Wales Miners' Library, including the library of individuals such as this, Brinley Griffiths. Brinley was a headmaster from Crynant, a mining village not far from Swansea. He was a prominent member of the Independent Labour Party, an adult education lecturer. He was active in the cooperative movement and a conscientious objector in World War I. And he decided to gift his magnificent library to the miners of South Wales. He passed away in 1974, and as the Miners' Library opened in 1973, the NUM in South Wales decided that his library should be placed in our care, and it is the heart of our library in many ways. In subsequent years, not only do we have his library, but we have the bookcase, the writing desk that's pictured, and also a radio and a chair. So it really brings his collection to life. We have a collection of trade union banners. We have over 50 banners, many of them miners' lodge banners. This again was started during the Coalfield History Project in the 70s. And again, it was Howell who realized that due to the publication of the book Banner Bright by John Gorman, which was a history of trade union banners, he realized that many of the miners' banners were in danger of being lost. The South Wales miners have a very different banner carrying tradition to other coalfields in the UK, and that's a whole other talk. But it is it's a really important collection, and one that we have been pleased to have lottery funding for over the years to actually enable us to preserve and house the banners in better packaging, and also create replica banners that can be used out in parades, in marches, and in community events. We have a large poster collection, over 500 posters, some from the Spanish Civil War, others calls to join hunger marches from the 30s, from 20s and 30s, from South Wales to London, and then more recent posters such as dating from the 1984-85 miners' strike. I'm whipping through all of these just to give you a flavour of the extent and the breadth of the type of materials and the different media that we have in the collection. We hold some very rare, important pamphlet collections which cover a huge range of subjects, looking at politics, education, social industrial history in South Wales, European, American history, cooperation, that we have a really large and important collection of pamphlets relating to the Spanish Civil War. And our collection focuses very much on the Welsh volunteers that fought as part of the international brigades. And in fact, we also have a memorial plaque within the South Wales Miners Library to remember them, and that was unveiled by the National Union of Mine Workers in South Wales in 1981. Our oral and video collection, again, it dates from the early 70s, but over the years we've had a number of interviews donated and deposited within our collections from academics who have been doing research, and it's an area of our collection that we are really keen to see used more, but also we're also very aware that there are stories and memories that we need to be actively going out and collect as well. But when the South Wales Miners Library was opened, it became a focal point for research into social, political, educational aspects of South Wales. And as I said, it was developed as a centre for adult and trade union education. And it was very important that the Miners Library maintained the spirit and ideals of the old miners' institutes. And that is something that over the last 50 years, we have endeavoured to maintain. And it's something that I am very conscious of and reflecting on as we look towards the future and our next chapter in our life. The collieries have gone, but the library still supports community-based education initiatives. And I think, you know, in the last 50 years since the library opened, and certainly in the 28 years since I've worked at the library, communities in South Wales have changed beyond recognition. The land where the coal mines once stood have been redeveloped, and with the transition from coal to renewable energy sources, I think our collections are still very, very important and are waiting to be mined by the next generation of researchers. And also, we're thinking about how our collections can align with the new opportunities that have opened up by the up and coming new curriculum for Wales. We have worked over the years with educational consultants to produce physical and online resources based on our collections, which are targeted at schools. But we hope, you know, to develop this more in future years. One example is based on the collection that we have on Paul Robeson, and in particular his link with the South Wales miners, which began in the late 1920s and actually still continues today through his granddaughter, Susan Robeson. So we have a large exhibition called Let Paul Robeson Sing, and numerous resources aimed at Key Stage 2 and 3. And while the exhibition is used a lot, the educational resources less so. And again, you know, with so many current issues in society, it's waiting to be used and explored. And I think now is an opportunity for us to review how we work and develop and make accessible our collections, not only to schools, but to everybody. So although the South Wales Miners Library has largely been used by students, academics for research, and also the media and former mine workers, we've always been open to everybody, and we've always been very keen to work with a wide range of audiences, whether they be local or whether they're from overseas. We've worked with partners in Japan, Australia, Germany, and the USA. But in 2017, new opportunities were opened up to us when the band Public Service Broadcasting used some of our oral history interviews in an album they released about the South Wales coal industry called Every Valley. The album went to #4 in the UK album charts, and the band and John Wilgoose, in particular, the frontman, have been very generous in their support of the library. And it's generated more interest in our collections, with fans of the band actually visiting the library to look at the material that John Wilgoose actually used in his research, which has been interesting. Not long after John Wilgoose used the library and Public Service Broadcast released their album, we had a concert in the library with Icy Rivers, an emerging band, actually played in the library as part of the Horizons BBC Wales Art Council Wales scheme. And ever since, we've been really keen to explore how we can work with the creative industries and encourage musicians, poets, actors, artists to come in and use our collections as inspiration. And we're currently in discussions with a local group of artists to create a series of prints for our 50th anniversary inspired by our collections, which we hope will go on display next year. And although we've taken out our library collections into the community for educational use, in the last couple of years, we've worked more on creative projects within the community. As part of the national UK-wide Being Human Festival, in November 2021, we actually took out a video, which we have in our collection, which was created by an adult education class in 1983 at the South Wales Miners Library, about the Dilys Valley, which is about 20 miles from Swansea. We took that video out and showed it to the local community and used it and worked with community groups to actually create a brand new video. The original video was called Waste of Our Time, Pictures of a Changing Valley, and it looked at how the valley had changed since the pits closed in the 80s. We showed elements of the video and created a new video looking at how the valleys had changed, not only since the 1960s, but from the 1980s onwards as well, and looking at themes such as environmental issues and sustainability. And that's available on our website if anybody wants to see it. We've also taken out parts of our collection and used and encouraged that to be used in creative ways. So last November, as part of the Being Human Festival, we used the women and the Welsh Mam who feature in our collections as the inspiration for a project to create a brand new banner for our library. Oops, gone on too far. So we worked with school groups, and we had workshops in the Miners Library and in our branch at the Dove Workshop at Banwyn, and within a 10-day period created this amazing bilingual banner which celebrates Welsh women. Other things that we have been doing, again, is developing a series of lectures. Last year, our inaugural lecture, we invited Michael Rosen to come and speak, and he spoke about his experiences of COVID and his support of the NHS, which is a really emotional talk, and again attracted a brand new audience to the library. We're very keen to make sure that our collections are more accessible. So we have been working on a series of digital collections, such as one on our banner collection, another one about the 1921 lockout. And during lockdown, we worked with Tyler's Town Welfare Hall to create an exhibition based on the items that we have in our collections in the Richard Burton Archives and the South Wales Miners Library, and take them out into the community to use them as a springboard to create an online exhibition. So what's next? Well, the South Wales Miners Library will shortly be moving. In our 50 years, we have already moved 3 times, and the built environment has always been important to us. Our building has been an important part of our identity, and we've been based in beautiful buildings, and we now are looking forward to moving into the city centre and a whole new chapter. So we have been thinking through our vision and our for the next chapter in our history, in our life, the next 50 years, and that work is currently ongoing. And just to finish, you know, I think going back to what I started with, where the Jonathan Rose described the Miners' Institutes of South Wales as one of the greatest networks of cultural institutions created by working people anywhere in the world. You know, we hope that we can do our past justice as we plan for our future. And I can't finish without just giving a nod to this man, Howell Francis, who I know will be known to many of you in the audience. It's thanks to Howell, you know, that the South Wales Miners Library exists, and we're grateful to his vision and tenacity in the early days of the Miners Library. And he and I worked very, very closely until his passing. And I hope that we will take his vision and spirit with us as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Sian, and thank you to all our speakers. Diolch yn fawr iawn for Sian for bringing in the Welsh perspective on the industrial struggle. Now, some questions and comments have come in, and no doubt we'll be opening the floor later on so that you can ask your own questions. But a question I was going to ask, but has actually been summed up very well by Anna O'Neill of the University of Warwick. You've all touched on this, especially Sian in her presentation just now. And Anna's comment is, all of these collections feel so very connected to what is happening in society right now, e.g. collective action, civic protest, and more. Are you seeing this playing out in the use of your collections? And if so, how? Marian, do you want to go first on this?
Yeah, sure. In some ways, yes. I think, as I said, this year we've acquired, I think, 5 new national trade union affiliates, and we've been able to work with these partners in some exciting new ways. For example, just last summer we held a young members course for the RMT. Obviously, a lot of these young people are now kind of in dispute for the first time. And recently, just in the last kind of month or so, we've had a few young teachers, members of the National Education Union, getting in touch with us, keen to bring students along and saying that their students are all asking about picket lines and what's going on, and wanting to kind of delve into some of the historical sources we've got to shed light on these broader kind of political and social questions as well. So I think those developments are really exciting. But obviously, there's always more we could be doing to make sure that our historical collections kind of chime with today and can tell us more. So that's what we've really been trying to explore recently, in terms of really kind of, I guess, mining our archives and getting to grips with them kind of ourselves, so that we're best placed to promote them in those ways to new audiences coming along and engaging in political struggle today. Thank
you very much. Thank you. Rachel.
Yes, so thank you, Anna, for that comment. So I'd pretty much say what Marian said. I mean, I think we certainly sort of collective action and political pressure groups and that kind of thing, which is obviously well reflected in what we have, that never goes away in a way. So that's a topic that I think is always of interest, you know, particularly our student audiences, who that's by no means all, but we often promote ourselves as being, you know, the repository that has lots of trade union records. We're, you know, the national sort of collecting centre for many trades union archives. And I think that there was probably, until fairly recently, a time when we felt that we weren't necessarily, you know, that wasn't a hot topic. And that, you know, it's like, well, trades unions, you know, they're, you know, are they still relevant and all the rest of it? And then suddenly you find that you couldn't be more relevant. Yeah, definitely what Marion has said, I think there are particularly young people who, you know, don't remember the 70s and 80s and periods of, you know, that's not come from their own memories. You know, so they don't have the memory themselves of that. So to be able to kind of show the long history of you know, labour struggle is great, and I think we should be doing more. Definitely, I think it's kind of almost caught us on the hop to be suddenly so super topical, and of course, you know, yeah. This is a good opportunity actually for us to start capitalising on it, I think, very much.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Shan.
Yeah, I would echo what has already been said. I think, you know, certainly we are seeing requests and interest from the media. I think there is a lot, though, that we need to be doing, could be doing. I think, you know, that we do suffer a little with our name, South Wales Miners Library. People think, oh, well, it's only to do with mining, you know, and don't really understand the depth and the breadth. And I think it was Rachel who has said, you know, you can pick a topic and you can find something within the collection relevant, and that very much resonates with my experience at both the South Wales Miners Library and the Richard Burton archives. And I think it's a real challenge for us, though, to capitalize on that. And I think, you know, we're stretched with resources and competing for funding as well. And I think, you know, there are events like this, and it provides opportunities, I hope, you know, for us to be working more closely together and looking at what we can do. You know, I was struck when Rachel, during her presentation, you know, she showed a pamphlet of Lidice. Well, we have, you know, the South Wales miners were very involved in the development of the film The Silent Village, which was actually based on Lidice, what happened at Lidice, and was filmed by Humphrey Jennings, who was the director. But it was actually filmed in Cwmgyrdd, a village in the Swansea Valley. So, you know, there are those kinds of links, and we've got a lot of information about that. And so there are opportunities. And again, it's all very relevant to discussions that are going on today. So, and I think there are probably links that we can make, which might seem tenuous, but actually are very revealing and very, very relevant.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Now, another question that I was going to ask you, but somebody else beat me to it. It's a question from Dave Cope. Could speakers name gaps in their collections? Is there any topic or individuals' papers that they would like to get their hands on? And I'm just thinking now, when Rachel said that they've just accepted the NUM's collection, that's just mind-blowing. I was heavily involved in the miners' strike, and so I know where I'm going to be visiting later on this year. So is there any topic or any individual's papers that you would absolutely love to have? Now I'd like to get a couple of more questions in, so if you could just answer these quite quickly, please. Marianne.
Well, I think Sian mentioned we do collaborate really closely, our little group of labour movement archives and libraries. So we do kind of ask around, and if we're offered something we don't quite think fits with us, we try and make sure all of our collections policies kind of make sense. We haven't been that proactive actually at the Marx Memorial Library, because we've been kind of getting our house in order and making sure we really know what we're doing in terms of archival development. But we are a developing collection. We've taken recently quite a lot of we've added to our Spanish collection a lot. We do still really frequently get people donating material to that collection. Recently, an actual International Brigade uniform came to us, which is very exciting. And similarly, our print workers collection, we've had lots of activists bring their material in to us. But for us, really, it's been about kind of consolidating and making sure we're up to scratch with all of our catalogue and all information before we move forward. One other thing, sorry, we have been looking at like solidarity campaigns. So we've got the Nicaragua Solidarity Campaign library coming to us recently as well. So I think in our collections policy, we have recognised that there are, despite not being super proactive, there are these strands that definitely speak to our existing collections and also feed into our education programme and things too.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, Rachel, is there anything that you can add beyond the NUM?
Well, I was going to say the answer a couple of years ago was the NUM. That isn't the answer anymore. And as I mentioned, we work collaboratively, so there isn't a kind of, we want to grab things mentality. Also, to echo what Marion says, a lot of archives will tell you they get offered so much that to do any collecting proactively is actually very, very difficult. Yeah. But we recognise that there are areas of the community that are not well represented, either because we haven't highlighted the contents well enough in our own. We recognise that our catalogues don't highlight those collections well enough, or because they are not anywhere otherwise well represented. I guess the only one that came to mind recently, I'm just going to say this just in case anyone's on the call and can help, but I think one of the biggest unions that we don't have any records for is USDOR, which is the Union of Shop Distributive and Allied Workers, and I don't believe we have any material from them. So I'm just throwing it out there. If anyone has any connections, just come and but obviously any trade union, big and small, we're always happy to kind of discuss taking material from.
Thank you. I hope you've all been listening to that as you all go searching for that archive. Shan.
Yes, there are. I think given the way that the Miners' Library was brought together, it was in some respect a rescue operation. And so there are, I would love to be able to find the books from Tredegar Workmen's Library, because we have about 2 and it was a huge library. Also, there are miners' banners, lodge banners, which I know existed and I don't know where they are. I would love to track them down and work really closely with Wayne Thomas from the National Union of Mine Workers in South Wales. So yeah, there are particular things which I would love to be able to find.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And another great question here from Edda Nicholson, who asks, is there anything in your collections? Is there a collection, or is there a file, a piece of paper that no one looks at, and yet you love them to look at just because they're so special? Let's start with Rachel this time. Do you have a little gem that nobody looks at?
Well, I suppose this is my opportunity, perhaps, and this is a bit unfair because we're still in the process of making this material available. So you'll have seen that I'm acting archives manager, so I've only been doing that since the beginning of the year. Before that, my role is as digital archivist. So my responsibility is for Born Digital collections, and they are probably the ones that, because they're the most recent records that we have, those are ones that probably don't get the attention they should. Although, to be fair, we are still working on making them available. But I think that, historians of the present need to remember about, websites, emails, digital materials, which are just as much archives as anything else. So I'm sure, well, I know there are gems already in the material that I've been working on that I think probably are being overlooked. And we're going to do our best to kind of work to get them out there.
Thank you. Shan.
Our oral history collection isn't used as much as it could or should, and I think there is just so much valuable material in that that I think there are many projects and papers waiting to be written by mining that oral history collection.
Yeah, thank you. Marianne.
Gosh, there's so much. I mean, it's only really in recent years that we've got archive catalogues online at all. So we had our National Archives funded project for the Spanish collection, where we've got that enormous collection up online since 2018. But just recently we've got our Bernal Peace collection, and we will be shortly starting a cataloguing project on our print workers collection. So all of this stuff, while it's been in the building, we haven't really been able to delve into it in the way that we'd have liked. And so hopefully that's going to make a massive difference. But also, not just that, we've got lots of kind of, like you said, little gems and treasures that perhaps don't form part of a larger kind of research collection. So people maybe aren't drawn to it or don't quite know it's here. I've got a file of like just manuscripts in this wonderful cabinet behind me, including, you know, letters from Eleanor Marx and Keir Hardie, Saklavala's membership card of the Communist Party, like all these things that really merit a proper display. And this is partly what I was referring to the project we're working on at the moment, where we want to be able to bring all this material out into the open to people who aren't necessarily after a reading room appointment or anything like that. So there's lots of challenges, both in terms of those larger collections and these smaller items that we really hope to kind of excite people with.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now we're running a bit short of time, so I just want to go over some of the comments here. There's a lovely one here. My Tadke, my grandfather, came to the Rhondda from rural Carmarthen at the end of the 19th century to become a miner. He brought with him his music and a violin bought for £5. With Uncle Jack, he'd led the music in the chapels at Pontrhydd and Kilcombe. In the Rhondda, he organised the concerts at the park and Dare Hall, Treorchy. His great-grandson now plays the violin and is a trade unionist, Gawain Little. That is absolutely lovely to hear. Thank you. There's so many thanks to everybody about the quality of the talks. Thank you so much. Do please read the comments that are coming forward, thanking everybody. It's been wonderful to hear about the projects that have been going on. A comment here, absolutely, I'd love to come and visit all three places. Well, they are all open to the public. For me, it has been such a blast from the past. I've been so actively engaged in so many of the topics that you've covered tonight, and it's been inspiring. And to me, especially one who does a lot of community work as well, to see how these collections can be used today. We have Mick Lynch, a towering figure in the media today, who is reminding us all of the importance of the trade union movement. And so I can't think of a better moment to have this, to have had this presentation. Thank you all for attending the talk tonight and for your wonderful questions, your stimulating questions, and your wonderful comments. But thanks especially to our three speakers. You are instrumental in keeping going so many relevant collections. We've heard tonight how relevant they are. And not only do they have a past, but they have a future. And hopefully they will keep on inspiring people as they did me well into the future. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Perhaps we could unmute to thank our speakers. Thank you all indeed.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks all.
Yeah. And please do visit.
Oh, your presentations were tremendous. Thank you so much. You'd all